Well, hello friends and neighbors. Welcome again to my deck. John, your whiskey neighbor here. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and I want to talk to you about a Canadian whiskey. This afternoon, we're going to look at something from Gibson. This is Gibson's Bold. I think it came out in about 2016, and has some interesting thoughts going on in here. So when we come back, we'll talk about Gibson's Bold.
3, 4.
Well, thanks for staying with me. As I said in the opener, I wanted to talk about a Canadian whiskey. It's a fairly humble Canadian whiskey. This is part of the Gibson's line. This one, Gibson's Finest Bold. Caught my eye a little while ago because it had a couple of unique characteristics for an entrance level whiskey. One, it carries an age stamp, says right on it, 8 years. I like that. It also indicates that it's 46%, so they've brought up the ABV from their regular 40%, by 6%. And I appreciate that as well. It mentions that it's a higher rye content. I appreciate rye and a little more spicy whiskey, or spice in my Canadian whiskey. So overall, when I saw this on sale, I thought I better try it. I haven't reviewed any Gibsons, I think, on the channel. And over the years, I haven't had a lot of Gibsons. I wish I knew more of the history. You look it up and it talks about how started as a rye producer in Pennsylvania and then was purchased and brought up into Canada. But Gibson's has been a Canadian whiskey now for a really long time. That was back around Prohibition time. And I don't know enough about, I think Brian's Kinsman, is that the right name, is their master blender right now. It's released under the William Grant & Sons ownership. I believe it's distilled at the Hiram Walker Distillery in Ontario. In keeping with many Canadian whiskeys, they distill their grains separately, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they age them separately and then blend them, vat them, and release them. So this is corn, mostly corn, and then a portion of rye and a portion of malted barley. And they would have been, again, distilled, aged, variety of barrels as well. When I looked in, I really wanted to find what barrels do they use, but they use some first fill bourbon, maybe even some new oak. That was a surprise to me, and a significant number of well-used or ex-whiskey barrels. But how that relates, do they do their corn more this and their rye more that? I couldn't find specific information. Corn, rye, malted barley, aged separately, minimum of 8 years. Beyond that, I guess I don't know enough about Gibsons. If you know a little more and throw something in the comment, I like to learn a little more about them as I can. This will be thoughts on the whiskey itself. This is Gibson's Finest Bold, 8-year-old, 46%. Oh, color. Someone accidentally spilled the bottle of coloring in here. I think anyone, new to whiskey or not, would look at this and go, huh, that's colored. It's radioactively colored. So aside from that comment, we're not considering it in the whiskey itself. This nose is very sweet, buttersweet, corn sweet. A little dusty, a little grainy. Back into caramel, cooked brown sugar, butter tarts, maple syrup. It's just really sweet, a little buttery, and the spice, if it's there, really doesn't come off on the nose. Nope, a little grainy there. But I will say, for 46%, very gentle nose. Let's give it a taste. Cheers. In the palate, It also is corn sweet, butter popcorn, sugared popcorn. That's even better. Oh, I really like popcorn twists that have been caramelized. That kind of thing, right? There's an edge of corn in there, but lots of sugar, lots of cooked sugar. And then at the end of the palate, or the early part of the finish, comes the rye spice. It's there. Comes out as a pepper, perks up on the edges of the mouth, takes over the palate, and continues into the early finish. Better have another sip. Interesting. Often when I drink something higher rye that brings out the pepper, the second sip keeps the pepper. Again in the mouth, almost washed the pepper out to the edges. Lots of coarse sweet whiskey. Then as there's less in my mouth, like now, you know, when I'm talking, the rye comes out. There's definitely a higher rye content in here. The spice is there. And the finish part is decent. Almost a little char, more rye spice. Fairly simple Canadian whiskey that does exactly what it says. Just a little more bold, a little more spice. I like spice, so I like the finish, the after I've had the whiskey. I'm like, huh, that wasn't bad. But every time I come and have a sip, I'm disappointed by the overwhelming sweetness, almost artificial sweetness notes. So even though I gave it notes like, you know, cooked brown sugar, caramels, that kind of stuff, and related it to one of my favorite sweet popcorn snacks, it actually comes off an artificial, you know, artificial cola, really, really sweet. And for me, that keeps it from being a favorite. Now, I think this would be a great mixer. I think it would be a very good mixer because I think the sweetness would be part of the sweetness of the cocktail or the cola if you're just doing that. And so there'd be nothing put off by that. And then some of that bite, some of that pepper, I think would carry into it, and that would make it a good mixer. So this is a good mixer. Back off on the coloring. If they could back off on the sweetness, I'd be interested. But as a sipper, it just doesn't come off. This is nothing but a 3-star whiskey. It's and 3-star means it doesn't put me off. I can clearly enjoy it, but it, like, I will not replace it, I don't think. We'll get to that in one of those replacement reviews, but it just isn't interesting as a sipper, but a probably pretty good mixer. All right, now that's my thought. Gibson's finest bold 8-year-old. I wanted to actually like it more. The rye, I wish the rye really gave it more rye flavor. Like you know, I like a little bit of herbal note or grassy note in my rye. I'm not getting that here. I'm really just getting the essential pepper of it. Anyways, moving on. I don't have any humble Canadians in my closet, and it's just not fair to compare it to a 25-year-old or like, you know, it's just not fair. So I did notice that I had one of these that came on a bottle, you know, those little things that come. And this is J.P. Weiser's Deluxe. Now, Deluxe is back at 40%, I believe. Yeah. And would also be a mix of those grains that I mentioned. Likely less rye. And rumor has it it's in actually the same age. It doesn't carry an age stamp. That, you know, they got a lot of whiskey stocks and they don't release young whiskey generally. So probably similar age. This is Gibson, not Gibson's. This is J.P. Weiser's, just their Deluxe, pretty much their entrance whiskey. Lighter, dustier. If there's corn in there, it's like smelling a corn husk, you know? Yeah, much lighter on the nose. Oh, in comparison, this has quite a bit of butter and graham cracker, and wow, So in comparison, still really sweet, but in comparison, that nose is more interesting than this. This is almost empty, just super light, nothing putting me off, but I'm chasing, like, what am I smelling? Light sweetness, more vanilla, and maybe a wisp of citrus. Now, and this is all about the sugary dessert. All right, let's see what the Wiser Deluxe tastes like. More light vanilla, edge of caramel, more light vanilla, a little bit of astringency or marker. Not a lot. That sounds too brutal. Just bitter, a little off. Okay, safe to say, that's not my favorite whiskey. In fact, this is just live first impressions. I haven't had Deluxe. Like, honestly, I cannot recall the last time I've had Deluxe. But in this moment, that's got to be a 2-star whiskey. It makes this mixer delightful. The nose is richer. It's still too sweet. It's still artificially sweet, and it's building up. And I'm liking this less. Like, I'm heading toward 2.5 stars. But in comparison, I mean, this goes less than 2. This is I'm sorry, JP Wiser. I like your products. I have many bottles that I truly are some of my favorite. But in this comparison, the Gibson's Bold 8 comes out a clear winner. So if you see them for similar prices, I suggest going for the Bold. It's going to be a better mixer. Neither of these are really sippers. You guys have a great Sunday.